Hi, I'm Hazel. I'm your moderator for today. Welcome to Traditional Agriculture in Agritourism. We have 5 presentations. We're hoping to shoot for keeping the presentations at 15 minutes so we can have 5 minutes for questions for each presentation. If you're asking a question, if you're presenting, just make sure you're speaking into the microphones. And if you want to learn more about the bios of our presenters or the subjects, feel free to check out the Huva app. So first up, we have agritourism as a tool for sustainable development in mountainous rural areas, evidence from Sri Lanka. Let's get started.
Good afternoon, ladies. There's no gentlemen, so there's ladies. Okay. My topic is agritourism as a tool for sustainable development in mountainous rural areas, evidence from Sri Lanka. I'm the senior professor of agribusiness management of the Department of Agribusiness Management of this university. However, I'm not currently in this university for a 3-year period. I am appointed as the Vice Chancellor of the University of Visual and Performing Arts. I'm working with the artists these days, but these papers I presented in 2020 because of the pandemic. This has been gone down, postponed. So we will see that this is Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is a very tiny island. The size is 25,000 square miles, little below the Indian subcontinent, India. And this is the island. Looks like a mango. So this is the altitude of meters, because you can see in the dark blue, and this middle of the country is hills, the mountainous area. Rest of the country, the coastal areas are mostly terrains. The temperature varies from, if you go to here, this area, daytime you get sometimes around 35-36 degrees Celsius. We are earlier, before 70s, we used Fahrenheit, feet, miles. Still we use, but in temperature we use Celsius. And if you come to the mountainous area, it comes down to 15, 13, 14 centigrades. A very big difference in the temperature. And this is the upcountry perennial crops tea. Sri Lanka is once it was the #1 tea exporter in the world, but I don't know now, it has gone down. But all these are planted in this mountainous area up to 5,000 feet. Sometimes goes up to 6,500 feet even. The aroma and taste of this tea grown in the mountainous area are higher compared to the low-grown tea. Low-grown tea is aimed for the Middle East countries, Arab countries. High-grown trees is aimed for this European market, especially UK market. And short-term crops, there are vegetables. Apart from tea is the main crop, and vegetables, mainly vegetable. The country's vegetable production is coming from this area in the upcountry. You can see these carrots, cabbage, all these vegetables are grown in the small scales in this area. And fruit farms in upcountry, sweet and sour bulbs, and you can see all things, and also paddy fields. The very interested is the paddy fields are stepwise, not in as terrains. And new areas that can be introduced as agritourism activities are off-road agri-product stalls, farm tours, farm accommodation, value-added farm product. Mountainous areas in Sri Lanka are mainly focused on agriculture and based on cash crops as vegetables and perennial crops as tea. These farms vary from quarter of acre, very tiny, to 20-acre lands. And majority of them are small scale farms, but consider the tea plantations are very big. They are managed by the companies, goes up to 2,000, 3,000 acres of lands. They are not owned by individuals, it's owned by managed by the companies. There is tea tourism in this area, in these plantations. And sustainable development in rural areas are mainly addressed on environmental, social, and economic aspects. However, rural communities, especially majority who are farmers in this mountainous region in Sri Lanka, face big disasters on environmental, social, and economic issues. And major farming activities in this area, as I showed you, vegetable farming, and as well as the big tea plantations, there are tea smallholders who contribute for the majority of the tea production in the country. Majority of the tea production is coming from the 60% of the tea smallholders, and 40% are coming from the tea plantations. And floriculture and cut flower production. We export cut flowers and the floriculture ornamental plants, special to Scandinavian countries as well as to the US. There are few number of upland paddy farmers and fruit farmers, and mixed cropping farming is the main farming system in area. However, majority of the farmers are not involving in the off-farm income sources such as farm tours, farm accommodation, value-added farm products. But however, I have seen majority of some vegetable farmers, they are involved in the off-road agri-products stalls. Majority of these farmers are not available about the agritourism. An alternative income source, when we interviewed them, they are willing to change from the farming to or farming incomes as to maintain as a solution for the risk what they are facing, especially this vegetable and other cash crop farmers. So you can see farm tourism in our country. This is a colonial era Bangalore. Now it is a monastery maintained by the monarchs, Catholic monarchs. And you can see stay at Radisson Bangalore. That is a farm stay, because Radisson Bangalore, even though it's a monastery, they have farm tourism. And this is a Hilton's Tea Factory Hotel. You can see that is earlier a tea factory converted to a 5-star hotel. If you go there, you can see, you can experience the tea factory, but it is a 5-star hotel. Inside you can see that is located in a tea plantation, and you can see a range of mountains and very beautiful area, and very expensive one. Room is, I think, $500 per night. And Madukale Tea Ecology, that is also located in a farm, a tea garden, tea estate, but it's a lodge. And farmers' expectations on agritourism, farmers accept the fact that if they can convert to their farms as agritourism farms, they can move towards more sustainable farming practices such as organic agriculture, traditional pest and disease controlling techniques, cultivate underutilized crops, and use of traditional value addition methods. But in Sri Lanka these days, if you talk to the organic agriculture, the farmers will trash you, because the last year the ousted president, he wanted whole country to be converted to a organic agriculture, and would be the first country in the world to become whole organic farming. But he banned importing the chemical fertilizer at all, zero. Finally, what has happened? The paddy production went down up to 40%, and prices of the vegetables and the poultry products and everything has gone up now. 3 times, 4 times. Earlier, one paddy kilo, rice kilo was 70 rupees. Now it is 250 rupees. You can imagine And because of, if you talk about organic farming to the farmers now, they will beat you with because, and the president has to ran away from the country because the mass protested on July 9th this year. And the current president is now he is moving away from all this. He has lifted the bans. And however, organic is not so sweet as we think. It is sweet for the home gardening, but not for the commercial agriculture. And major findings of this one, farmers believe that by entering to tourism business, which is considered as a more valued sector, the young generation can be kept in the farming system. Farmers expect that government will introduce agritourism as a policy decision and regularize it by giving a better recognition. Farmers, that is very important because Sri Lanka is a tourist country, but mainly focusing on beach tourism. Majority of the now next month, by starting of the winter in Europe and US, this Western world, this Northern Hemisphere, and we will get the tourists from this end, and mainly they are coming to beaches and surfing, kite surfing, boat surfing, and extra. And this is the main area, mass tourism. But there are a lot of areas you can diversify in agriculture as this tourism and as well as ecotourism, combined with all these things in different ways. Farmers also pursue that unless government support, they are not powerful enough to compete with big tour operators who have the monopoly of the tour and travel industry in the country. And in conclusion, I would like to say, considering all these findings, it can be concluded that farmers are willing to enter into agritourism industry if government declares promoting agritourism in farming areas, agritourism in farming areas as a government policy. Then agritourism can be used as a tool for especially environmentally sound, socially benefited and economically protected sustainable development in these rural areas. So thank you for your attention.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And you are the first person to stick to the time limit. So I really appreciate that. We do have time for questions. Yes, I can bring the microphone around since we have such a small group.
Thank you. I was wondering, I missed your introduction of yourself, but I'm an American, and I could see maybe an opportunity if farmers wanted to present live on video to people from around the world. So say people are very interested in learning about tea growing, and but they can't go there. I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to develop an educational program there, maybe for more seniors who travel or not, or, a lot of seniors, people of more older like to learn, but they can't travel. So I'm wondering if that's an opportunity to get to sell time with farmers to talk about, maybe they can walk around and show their farm, something like that. It hit me that might be of interest, a way to extend agritourism, even though we talk about experiential, but I just see there might be an opportunity there.
And yeah, feel free to answer through that microphone. We also, if you're on Zoom, feel free to enter questions in the chat. Would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, I think it is true that from this end, if you are in my and your age, if you are traveling for long distance from here to Sri Lanka, it takes nearly 30 hours by flight with the airport roaming in the time. And because of that, I think your suggestion is better. So I think that we can, if we have to think about differently how we can have a virtual field of different type of things, how we can do. I will give you a simple example. after the pandemic. Actually, I was appointed as the Vice Chancellor of the Visual and Performing Arts University in the mid of the pandemic. So, the dancing, music and painting and sculpturing cannot be done virtually. You have to come to the university, you have to do dancing, you have to do music, and you have to do painting. But fortunately, within the last 2 years, the university I ran with all my lecturers and the deans virtually. Students, they haven't seen the university yet. Some students yet, they haven't seen one day. It's in the Colombo city, but now we are trying to bring them. And if we can do fine arts virtually, definitely tourism can be done virtually. Thank you.
We have an online question. The question is, are there any policies currently being developed by the government to assist agritourism operators?
Yeah, that's a problem. Not yet. I am forcing the government since 2009 to accept agritourism as a alternative tourism strategy in the country. I don't know whether I will be successful, but I'm still trying. But that's what we are suggesting to the government, that there are here and there, and also tea tourism is booming, and as well as cinnamon tourism, which is cinnamon tree is the origin of island Lanka. The botanical name is Cinnamomum ceylanicum. Ceylon is the all the name of Sri Lanka, and because of that, most of the tourists who are coming to the Sri Lanka, they would like to go to the cinnamon plantations and see cinnamon peeling, value addition of the cinnamon. So this type of thing can be introduced along with the normal tourism tours.
Awesome. Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Awesome. All right. We're on schedule. Woo! Thank you so much. So our next presentation is Inuit sheep farming in Greenland, sustainable tourism in Southwest Greenland through an indigenous framework.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Katherine Follansbee, and I'm a second-year master's student studying economics at the University of Maine. I'm here today to present research that I'm doing with my research partner, Maya Retta-Williams, who is studying anthropology at UMaine. We are both members of the Climate Change Institute and both National Science Foundation Fellows on what's called an NRT, which is a National Research Traineeship, and ours is studying the Arctic. My research partner could not be here today, so I'm going to do my best to represent her views. We're in the very preliminary stages of this work. This is my first time presenting this work or ever presenting away from UMaine. So we're very open to not only questions, but also all kinds of suggestions that you may have about our research. So I said NRT, which is the National Research Traineeship we're under. And that basically the goal is to train students through an interdisciplinary research project to be the next generation of Arctic researchers. So we're doing this through community-based collaborative research, co-production. And our project in particular is looking at not only agritourism, but also research fatigue in Southwest Greenland. And so we're doing that through the lens of economics on my side and anthropology on Maya's side. So in June of this year, we spent 3 weeks in South Greenland in this region called Kujataa. You can see it. I don't know if this has a laser pointer. Oh, it does. Right here. And just for context, the country of Greenland is the size of 4 Texases stacked on top of each other. And yet this little region here is the only area where agriculture goes on, except there's one farm outside of that, but that's really the hub for agriculture. So that's why we're looking at Southwest Greenland. So why are we looking at tourism? So I have 3 metrics to show how tourism has been increasing the past 20 to 30 years. And the first is total overnight stays per year. So since the mid-90s to the year 2020-ish, this red line is where the pandemic hit, of course, we can see a major increase in tourism in overnight stays. Then with international flight passengers, we see a similar trend, but not as dramatic. And lastly, we see a dramatic increase in cruise passengers. So it actually quintupled from the early 2000s to 2020. Cruises did stop when the pandemic hit, but you can see this really serious increase here. And if you've ever been on a cruise ship, you may think 50,000 people per year is not too huge, but when you consider that the population of Greenland is only 56,000 people, that's a huge influx of basically the entire population coming every year. So like I said, these graphs show that there's been a huge increase in tourism recently. We don't have any data, unfortunately, on agritourism or on farm stays yet. It's relatively new in Greenland and they just haven't been tracking it, but hopefully that will become more accessible. So now let's look at the claim that mass tourism harms communities while small-scale tourism can prove beneficial. And when I say mass tourism, of course, I'm talking about things like cruises. And when I say small scale, I'm talking about agritourism style farm stays. So this tension between mass tourism and small scale tourism is really the jumping off point for our research in Greenland. So we designed a research program to discuss these issues with Greenlanders. And we wanted to hear about key opportunities, challenges, motivations, and research needs within the tourism sector. So like I said, we're pretty early on, but we've conducted 3 interviews to date, 1 with a former farmer and 2 with people in the tourism sector. And interestingly, the findings we've had have been really similar to those in prior work from other countries. So for example, that money is really not a motivation for people hosting tourists on their farms. In interviewing the former farmer, we learned that tourists actually approached her and asked, will you host us? We need somewhere to stay. This is a convenient location. And she said yes. So then I asked, okay, well, when that was successful, is that why you kept going, to make money? And she said, no, the money wasn't enough to really matter. It's that she lived in such a remote location that it was nice to have people visiting. They had no radio. It was her only connection to the world at that time. So this kind of echoes the idea of that other people have found that farmers' main motivation for agritourism is often not financial. Instead, it's cultural or social. So we do have more interviews to go. And as we do so, we're embracing indigenous methodologies, building relationships, and being patient and responsible with our research. But so far, we have found that small scale tourism can be a really great opportunity, particularly farm stays, to support small businesses and community members and be a sustainable way to visit Greenland. Just as a side note, when we've spoken to Greenlanders, they've explained that cruises can be really harmful to them in that their towns are so small, and so these cruises come, inundate them. They don't spend enough money or enough time to be beneficial. They actually wipe out the resources because most of their stores are imported in, so all of their food just is gone when people come and visit. So small scale tourism, agritourism, we love that. So in the context of this research, wool has come out as a really emerging theme. And we did not go in at all interested in wool. We went in thinking that people were going to say, we need help with farm stays, we need more infrastructure. That is not at all what people said. They were like, we have that covered, we don't need help, we're all set. But they did say they have all this wool that they don't know what to do with. So before the pandemic, they were shipping their wool to Europe, and then it would be processed, cleaned, dyed there, and it would bounce around from England to Poland, and that was really expensive, but people were doing it because they didn't want to waste this resource they had. But then the pandemic hit and it was just too expensive, and they can't really process it locally in Greenland because no 2 towns are connected by roads. They can't ship it around. And you can use boats, but 1, boats are expensive, and 2, it's Greenland and the water freezes. So that's really, transportation isn't convenient up there. So here on the right is a picture of a bag of wool that I took on a farm. And this is wool that was going to be burned. And just for scale, this bag of wool is as tall as I am, and there were many of them on the farm. So they're burning wool in huge quantities. And the farmers and the locals were saying that this kills them. This makes them so sad. They don't like burning their resource. There's just nothing else they can do with it. But they do see it as a potential opportunity for tourism, culture, and local economies. So when we talk about culture, we have an example here, this beautiful Inuit limegrass basket on the left, which it just highlights that there's an opportunity to use this resource that they have to embrace culture and highlight like Inuit art. So that is a really exciting opportunity. So we're hoping, as I'll talk about on my future steps slide, that we can kind of work with Greenland to talk about processing or mini mills and agritourism. So these next 2 slides really highlight the 2 key themes that my colleague Maya is looking at in our project, which are research fatigue and extractive research / tourism in the region. And this quote that I'll just let you read in a moment really highlights something Maya wanted to speak about, which is the commodification of communities that can occur when research and/or tourism is not self-determined. And this is something to consider when we look at things like the limegrass basket I was just showing. Self-determination makes all the difference here, and it's important to keep that at the forefront of the work that's done, so we're not just selling these experiences or selling this art without giving credit where credit is due. So I'll give you a moment to read through this. And that brings us to the research side of things. So there's this concept of hit and run research in which researchers come to a community, often a small community, they take a bunch of knowledge and then they leave and they're never heard from again. They don't share their findings, they don't share their suggestions. And this does happen all over the world. There are similar examples everywhere, but South Greenland is a really specific place where this goes on because it's home to multiple UNESCO World Heritage Sites, which brings in not only tourists, but also researchers. So a lot of hit and runners, unfortunately. And so this can really create a lack of respect, and it's really detrimental to the people who live there, to the communities. And on our trip, we interviewed a UNESCO site manager who's in charge of facilitating the research in the area. And she was talking about how difficult it is to balance her job and fostering research, but also protecting her community and her family from this extraction that can go on. So this is an issue that we'll be looking at further as we do our work. So in terms of future work, we have kind of the anthro side in the first two bullets and the econ side in the second two bullets. So when we talk about rethinking the beginning, we're talking about the beginning of the research. So oftentimes sufficient time is not given to researchers to get to know the people in place before they begin the work. They just dive right in and then they have to learn about the place that they're entering and studying. And this can cause more stress and harm on the community, leading to uninformed and not so meaningful results. So therefore, we're looking at redefining the beginning of these kinds of projects to be more based around people in place than on proposals and the timeline of a grant. And I know grants kind of determine everything in research. So potentially providing the time and money within the grant to create relationships and learn about the people in place before data collection begins to allow research to be as self-determined as possible. And then in terms of the economic side, we really aim to look more deeply at tourism as an economic adaptation to climate change in the Arctic and wool as an emerging sector with growth potential. As it happens, Maine Fiber Arts is an organization in my home state of Maine that encourages fiber arts and fiber tourism. And it's been around for 20 years. And so they have a fiber festival every year. They have a fiber trail. And so they really organize and kind of sell fiber arts in Maine. And we see this as an example of the kind of knowledge that can be shared with Greenland to help them build their fiber art sector. And we're not just saying we have info for you, listen to us. We're hoping for a knowledge exchange. So we know from their generations of knowledge with textiles that we can learn from them, and we hope that they can learn from us. So we're hoping to look into opportunities for exchange and learning between Maine and Greenland around not only agritourism, but tourism in general and socioeconomic issues. So I'd like to thank our research advisors, Dr. Darren Renko and Dr. Kathleen Bell, the National Science Foundation for funding this research, and the International Workshop on Agritourism for having me here today. Thank you so much, and I welcome all questions and suggestions.
So yes, we have time for questions. So if you have any, you can come up or I can bring the microphone to you. Also, if you're on Zoom, feel free to post it in the chat and we'll read them out loud.
Yeah, Greenland is owned by Denmark, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. So what are the Greenland? It has a separate autonomous government.
Yeah, they have home rule, but they're owned technically by Denmark.
Okay. Who decide this tourism policy in that region?
Greenland does.
Greenland does.
Yep, and it's actually by municipality. So each region, it's not really countrywide, it's more regional.
So how much is the mass tourism? How much tourism coming as a mass tourist in this area?
It's most tourists are.
Yeah, how much? Do you have any figures?
No, I do not.
Okay. So then only wool tourism, wool.
Well, that's super new. It is happening. They just had a wool conference. It was kind of a wool festival in Greenland last month, but it's a very new thing. It was the first one they've ever had.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
Hi. So after all your research, kind of what were the next steps for kind of your recommendations for the local people there and what to do with their wool and how they can kind of build that agritourism?
Yeah, great. So we're looking at the idea of mini mills, which they have in places like Iceland and Norway. So rather than a huge process, huge production, more in the town, very small mills, so that the local farmers can all work together and have a little mill so that they can process their things. There also are people who process on their own farms, which we also encourage. It's just a lot of work. So mini mills are really coming out as one of the best options. Then in terms of agritourism, hosting people on the farm, then they can help in the spring with the lambing process or with the shearing of the sheep and kind of just getting to know the sheep, getting to know the farmer. And then you're more connected to the wool you're working with, and then having people there who can do needle felting while they're on the farm. So really the entire experience from shearing the sheep to cleaning the wool. So even that processing could be part of the tourism.
That's awesome. And then did you kind of identify how they could sell their wool outside of just the farm stay and the local villages and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So because it's such an isolated area, they're finding that the best results they're having are actually just on social media, posting pictures of, look, this sweater is made of wool. People don't even know that there is farming going on in Greenland. I've said it during this conference, people have been like, what are you talking about? Everyone thinks it's just a giant iceberg. It's not. So just popularizing the idea that there is wool in Greenland, it's really good, especially because the sheep have adapted to the really cold weather and the really harsh climate. So the wool is really strong and it's extra warm. So kind of giving this idea of like, there is Greenlandic wool. It's not just Iceland and sweaters. There are Greenland and sweaters, but there are different kinds. So I think Instagram has been a really interesting way that people have been popularizing selling their wool.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
I actually have a question for you. In terms of, you said they're shipping out the wool to other places to process. So is it just that air travel is easier than like boat travel, or how is that working as well?
Yeah, so they were shipping it. It all fell apart during COVID, like literally everything else. But they were shipping it on boats, and that was just because there's so much of it. Like it's so not even dense. It's just fluffy. And so boats to Europe was the best way, just because in Europe they have the roads and they can put them on the trucks and drive them away, rather than in Greenland they'd like ferry them around and the ice.
Awesome, thank you.
I wish I had had more time to kind of think of a question. I don't think I have a question, but I just recently my eyes have been open to the extractive nature of a lot of anthropological research, and how it's just often done not in relationship, but in subject, like people are really objectified. So I just appreciate how you are sharing this and how you're going about this. I think it's really, really exciting, and I'm so glad you could share today.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much.
Any other questions? Kate, is there anything else you didn't get a chance to touch on that you would like to talk about, or any last remarks? This is the last day of the conference, so can you sum everything up for us? Or anything you want to talk
I'm not
about?
really the girl to do that, but Greenland is very cool. I 100% recommend going. Please stay on a farm if you go. But if you are interested, there are like Facebook pages. If you look at Farm Holidays South Greenland, it's so cool. You can kayak through icebergs, which is a little bit scary, but very cool. There's so much cool stuff to do. There's tons of hiking. We hiked like 70 miles in the month we were there. It's amazing. It's not cold. It was 70 degrees when we were there. There's still icebergs. So it's very worth it. It's beautiful. And the sheep.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have, it looks like 3 more presentations for you all. And then just to run through the schedule. So then we're gonna actually have a 20-minute break, and then we'll have another session here, Agritourism Works Vision session. And then a quick reminder, we have to wrap that up immediately at 4 p.m. because then we're headed back down and have the planetary session, the last one. And that's the end of the conference. And Iris and I handpicked some apples for you guys when that comes. So make sure you try the first apples of the season from this morning. Yes, we woke up and did it from a farm that's like 25 minutes away from here. So hopefully you guys will all get to try that, because Vermont apples are phenomenal. So next up, we have fostering entrepreneurship in agritourism in the developing world, a case in Sri Lanka.
Okay. Good afternoon, ladies. Because I think that gents are not coming to listen. Okay. Fostering and entrepreneurship in agritourism in developing world. I took Sri Lanka as a case. So this is one, and this is actually different cultural areas. You can see in northern part of the country, there are ruins of the ancient cities which were older than 2,500 years. You can see there is a ancient city started that was established somewhere around 2,800 back. Very old city, and with this and also this you can see that Vilpattu is that with this deer photograph, that is one of the national park, wildlife park, and also this there are 4 or 5 national wildlife parks where you can find out the elephants. We have elephants. It's a treasure for the country. And you can see there's a Pinnavala. There's a one. This is the world only elephant orphanage. So the tamed elephant, when they lost their mothers, fathers, or when they broken their legs, whatever, they were brought to that place and they were adopted, feeding with the bottles, like you feed the babies, and looking after elephants until they die. So that is very high tourist attraction place. And you can see this place. You know, it is one of the religious mountain. Buddhists believe the Buddha's footstep is there. Christians believe the Adam's, the first man in the world, his step is there. And Muslims think the Holy Muhammad's step is there. So, and also Hindus believe it is a Shiva. So all 4 religions they believe, but it is while Sri Lanka is a Buddhist country, more 70% are Buddhist. The place is owned by the Buddhist monks, but all others can go and pilgrimage. So this is there's a diversification of the country in heritage as well as wildlife and flora and fauna and all these things. You can see that why I have choose these photographs, so this map actually, you can see different areas in the country are specialized for different things. For religious tourism, so agritourism, so ecotourism, heritage tourism, etc. And this is the geography as I mentioned you. And alternative tourism opportunities in Sri Lanka, this is the tea tourism. You can see tourists when they visit these tea plantations. In the farm they practice how they are plucking. So I was in the tea sector. I was a tea planter before joining the university for 10 years. So the plucking is a specialized field. And this is the nature of the country. Bakers Falls in Norelia, It's a very beautiful one of the waterfalls in the upcountry. Upcountry, you may not find number of waterfalls, but it's one of this one. But when you come to the mid-country, the water is coming from the upcountry and falling down the low country. Between the mid-country, you can get more than 150 waterfalls around the country. And tea plantations in the hill country and this, and also cinnamon tourism. So, you know, cinnamon is as I told you, that the origin is Sri Lanka. And if you want to see the peeling of cinnamon, it's a special skill thing. You have to be there before 7 a.m. in the morning. After that, they stop because starting around 5 a.m. and they complete the peeling by 7 a.m. So after that, they are not doing it because the temperature should be lower when you are peeling cinnamon and get the quality of the cinnamon bark. And you know, the sticks are used for the making the walking sticks, cinnamon sticks, because there's a medicinal value. And spice gardens in Sri Lanka, you know, spices are there. A lot of you can see that different type of cloves, cardamom, nutmeg, pepper, etc. Extra. There are a lot of spices, cloves, cardamom, nutmeg, pepper, and paddy in rural Sri Lanka, and traditional ploughing in paddy fields. I also cannot see this is now because now people are not using these buffaloes for ploughing. They are using the machines now. And traditional paddy planting, earlier they do this type of planting, but now there's no more. And these are the rural paddy fields with the coconut trees. And harvesting, also this was very early, 10 years, 15 years back, you could see this, but now all the things are done by machines. And the countries like Sri Lanka is expecting a rapid boom of economic development through enhancing tourism industry in their countries, which has a wider potential of its development and innovative improvement. I have seen this thing in Malaysia. Malaysia population is 23 million, 25 million, around 25, 26 million. But they are getting more than 28 million tourists per annum, more than the population. And they have recorded 6 million agritourism to their country. It's recorded. I don't know how they have counted, but I have found 3 times I was in Malaysia for agritourism congresses. So I found that there are 6 million. The Sri Lanka has, as I told you, wider diversification of agriculture as famous cinnamon garden in southern coastal areas, beautiful tea plantation in midlands and uplands in mountainous region of the country, famous spices gardens, paddy and other crops in eastern, northern, north central and northwestern provinces, as well as coconut in western and southern coastal areas. Along with this beautiful flora and fauna of the country, agritourism will be a most entrepreneurial tourism activity in the next decade. It will be planned properly and given priority by the government tourism policies. The other thing is, one of the major constraints for rapid development of the tourism sector in Sri Lanka is heavy shortage of accommodation facilities. The number of hotel rooms for tourists available in the country is about 25,000 at the end of 2018. The provision of tourist accommodation can be enhanced by alternative use of the farmlands, buildings, and other assets. For farm households, the diversification tourism might present a challenge owing to the combination of two separate, different but interlinked businesses, which are farming and agri-tourism. So, limiting factor in popularizing agritourism in Sri Lanka, limitation of availability of land, small-scale farmlands, and poor soil conditions, high vulnerabilities to adverse weather patterns. Yeah, these days I heard from I read in the internet, heavy rains and heavy floods are. Yes. In one hand, it is fortunate for us because we are a country, a majority we are depend on the power from the water for hydropower. So I think that it's better we have had the rains. But on the other hand, it is not good for the farmers. because they are damaging their farming fields, and roads were getting blocked because of the heavy rains and landslips. Unpredictable changes of government policy, that is a very bad thing in third world countries. Because of, I told you that from this month, March to July 9th, the country has a big disaster because of the policy of the last president. Because in my country is executive presidency, it's unlike in American system. It is more related to the French system. We have a prime minister as well as the president. President has executive power. So it is, he doesn't want to listen to any minister or the prime minister. So what has done, I told you that because of that, the policies were changed overnight. So that is the big problem in this country. But however, now things has been getting normal. And the additional income that generates through agritourism by farmers will definitely increase the money circulation in the rural areas, and subsequently it will contribute to the economic development of these areas. Sri Lanka is expecting more development in rural habitats, and therefore promoting entrepreneurship among farming communities inevitable in this regard. Thus, agritourism entrepreneurship is considered important for enhancement of the family economy of the farmers, as well as the development of the total tourism sector in the country with less investment. Thank you for listening.
Questions, if you're on Zoom, feel free to post them in the chat. Thank you.
One thing I didn't see you mention was infrastructure like internet. How is that in Sri Lanka? Because that would really inhibit or promote, you know, agritourism, is to be able to connect.
So infrastructure, if you take 3G and 4G is available. Mainly 3G is the country is covered with 3G. Yeah, farmers.
So the farmers have easy
Yeah.
access
Yeah.
all over the country
Yeah.
to
all over the
internet.
country. Even the population is 22 million.
Yeah.
You know, the using of the mobile phones and smartphone, majority of the people are using smartphones, and each person, when you compare, I think that last information, the data which we got is about 22 million people are using 35 million mobile phones.
So
And they are using internet,
mhm.
and they are very active in Facebook, the social media, because more than Twitter, our people are using Facebook. You know, the last president was ousted by the Facebook campaign. So one day, within one night, because by Facebook campaign, they brought over 100,000 people to the Colombo city, and they invaded the president's palace within 8 minutes. That is a very good man. He didn't order to the army to shoot the people, but within 8 minutes, the palace is joining with the sea, and he was ran away from the sea.
I wish we had that coverage.
So
in
that
the-
is you can use it for the good as well as bad.
Right. No, what I was saying, I wish we had that type of internet coverage in the Northeast US, because Vermont and Maine have a lot to gain by that.
I have a question. Thank you so much for the presentation. In what ways do you think, like, sets after being at this conference, how do you think Sri Lanka is like set apart from the trends you've been seeing in terms of agriculture and agritourism in other countries? And then what are the ways that you think Sri Lanka is most similar?
So exactly what's the question? Concretely.
So after attending this conference and seeing how agritourism plays out in many different countries across the world, I'm just curious, what are kind of your main takeaways as the major differences between agritourism in Sri Lanka versus other countries, and what ways is Sri Lanka similar?
in this during this conference as well as in the first conference, I got a lot of experience. Especially, I was interested not on the this research which they have done. Because I am as a professor, I'm listening this research for nearly 30 years now for my students and postgraduate students, undergraduates, and everyone. But I am interested about the case studies. I have got a lot of knowledge and experience I gained from the case studies which were presented during this conference. So I think that we can adopt these experiences which I got from this case studies, especially from the South America and Europe, as well as I think Africa is not here, but other countries. So, however, as I told you, even though as a I'm an academic, but I have some relationship with the politics also. So hence, I think I can influence to the government to introduce or promote agritourism in the country. I think if Sri Lanka, if you go to the Indian subcontinent, all the countries in the Indian subcontinent, India, Bangladesh, Nepal, Pakistan, Maldives, these countries, they took Sri Lanka as a model for development up to last year, up to this year. But suddenly something has happened. It has been it's a, for a time being thing. So I think that if we can develop agritourism in the country, we can make it in the region, in the Indian subcontinent, which we have a collaboration called SAARC countries. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so our next presentation, I believe it's remote, unless the presenter's here. It looks like it's remote. In which case, is the presenter on Zoom? So our next presentation is tea agronomy as means of agritourism, a case in small scale tea growers in the Brahmaputra Valley of Assam. Are you here, or we can wait a little bit? I know we're ahead of schedule. Bear with us, we have some time.
Hopefully one more time. Yeah, we were there for a whole month, so that was like a huge thing. So they're like, oh, we send you again. So hopefully one more time. But if not hurry, so I'll definitely go back. Yeah, yeah, especially like it's just crazy weather. So they're hard to watch. And then they said like they're doing this around to show us the operating. Just because like it is weird to slow down, but that's also kind of nice. Yeah. Like going to I know it's so big. Yeah. So close. So people hold that like the town we're in, it's 24 years old. That's like even the cities, like the biggest, well, not big, but the bigger people like do that. Like everywhere. Yeah, like really, yes. A little green, but like mostly. Yeah, towards because it makes it bigger than that. It really works. It's just more local, like where they're talking. Yes. I just found out. I was buying it all. Once you buy it. The cinnamon is kind of just like, looks like a horse stuff like this. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Flavors. She went right before, right before the pandemic. She told me that she was yeah, because we're really well, people like those. Yeah, yeah, so I tried to do
Hi, everyone. We're just waiting on our presenter, who we believe is virtual. But until then, we can just hang out, talk amongst yourselves, etc. last 20-minute presentation of this session of traditional agriculture and agritourism. We have a video for you, but then the presenter's remote and she's on the Zoom. So then we can hopefully have time for Q&A with her afterwards. A best practice for agritourism and education in and about alpine pastures and traditional agriculture.
Hello everyone, my name is Nadegger and today I'm happy to present to you our student project titled Schule der Alm, which is about meaningful and unforgettable holidays on alpine pastures. Together with my colleagues Birgit Bosio and Christoph Engl, I'm working at the Management Center Innsbruck. And now I will tell you more about our project and ourselves. So let me first introduce us. All three of us work in the Tourism and Leisure Business Department at the MCI in Innsbruck in Austria. Birgit Bosio as a lecturer, Christoph Engl as a professor, and myself as a PhD researcher, also affiliated with the University of Innsbruck. And today I'm going to present you the project that is called Schule der Alm. Schule der Alm is German and it means something like School of Alpine Pastures, which describes sort of an alpine environment where there is an educational sense for traditional agriculture. This School of Alpine Pastures is based near also our university environment. To be a little bit more precise, you can see here the map of Austria in Europe, which is the red tiny country in the middle, and then the valley the Schule der Alm is based at, which is a small valley near the Italian border in Austria. So what is Schule der Alm and why is it so important that I talk to you about this today? So for Schule der Alm, it is important to know at first two people, which is Helga Hager and Werner Kreutler. You can see them here down in the picture. So Helga started to revive the family business and the goat farming and traditional alpine agriculture in the Walsertal Valley in Tyrol. And then, once she started this business, her paths crossed with Werner Kreutler, who as a Tyrolean blogger invested in the tourism industry and just came back from his St. James pilgrimage. And then, by chance, actually, their paths crossed and he discovered the pasture and the important work that Helga does there. So then in 2016, after a couple of brainstorming sessions, they started to found the non-profit association Schule der Alm, to bring a business idea to life. So what was important for them is that Helga quickly realized that living and working and handling these traditional agriculture and alpine pastures was not possible alone. So she was looking for the need of support, and together with Werner, they tried to establish a project that would both enable her to continue doing this very stressful and tiring but also beautiful work, but at the same time offering something more. So their next step was to find volunteers for continuing these agricultural practices while similarly offering a unique tourism experience. So the mission of the project was clear. It is about preserving alpine pastures but also educating more people, so a broader public and guests, about this traditional agriculture and the heritage of alpine landscapes. So what the project is about consists of three major cores. It is one, these traditional practices, for example, mowing, clearing, fence building, herb and bee caretaking, but also traditional culinary experiences. It is about the people involved, so locals instructors from nearby valleys who have been living in this environment for years, but also to get guests and volunteers from all over the world on board and show them really the specificities of these landscapes and these practices. And beyond preserving the cultural and ecological state of the region, these projects and preserving these meadows allows to offer protection for natural hazards, for example, like landslides or avalanches in the mountain village, but it also continues a legacy of these alpine pastures. So what did they kind of plan or evolve. It was a touristic project that's called Schule der Alm, so School of Alpine Pastures. And what they do is they offer basic courses with an educational program with local instructors that learns these techniques to a group of people. So usually in summer you have 3 different sets of these basic courses which range around 1 week and have a couple of days of intense working and learning, but also some time to experience the regions and the landscapes. So while this association was welcomed very warmly and was already a huge success, they also faced some problems and challenges along the way after a couple of years of being established. So, for example, the problems from within is the association, a lot of them are like in their retirement or started to really engage in the services very late. So the succession of what comes next, what happens if people cannot put in as much energy anymore as they want, becomes a big question also for the continuation of activities. So it needs a lot of local knowledge, and therefore it is important really to think about these practices in the long term. The next problem was also if it is a good idea to expand into other side valleys, or if the concept is kind of situated and very typical for the local environment. And of course, with the generational change and the succession of the association comes also the question of who is conserving really the traditional techniques and how can they be sustained. But there are also problems from the outside. So, for example, a loss of customers due to new providers like holidays on other farms. Also a loss of customers through substitute products, so for example, through hiking or through other outdoor experience. Copycat patterns that try to replicate these sort of very traditional experiences. Then also the question of mass tourism in the Tyrolean valleys in general, and of course the decline in donation and sponsors, especially over the COVID times. So what these problems triggered also for us at the department was, okay, how can we preserve this beautiful touristic product, but also give something back to our students and kind of continue the educational spirit of the School of the Alpine Pastures. So with our Management Center Innsbruck Master Program, Entrepreneurship and Tourism, in the course Business Plan and Startup, we tried to get to know the project with the students, kind of also get to know the sorrows of the Alpine Pasture project, and the most important thing, we wanted to help them develop this offer further and continue their work. So the course objective was to map the core elements and to develop a business plan for the School of Alpine Pastures. So the outline of the course, you can see here how it was structured. So first, there's some theoretical input on business development. Professor Christoph Engl is the main lead in this project. So he kind of gives the guidance on the entrepreneurial aspects and on the business plan aspects of the course. Then during the COVID times, there were online project presentations where the students, together with the leaders and the leadership team of the association, reflected on their work, and then also engaged in further interviews with the project partners. And then in the end, the final outcome was these final concept presentations at the School of Alpine Pastures. So what is the main finding of these courses? So first, the students engaged with the strength of the Alpine Pasture project, so of the Schule der Alm. This was the high credibility due to their local knowledge givers and educators, the great untapped potential of this cultural heritage, the soft tourism approach that is really also comes from a sustainable angle, the strong togetherness created among participants and educators, the wide network across the valley, and of course the profound knowledge that these projects can pass on. If you then remember the problems I mentioned earlier on, like the succession and the continuation of activities, but also the loss of customers and the decline in donation and sponsors, The student project identified two main paths for sustaining this offer. It was first the involvement of existing customers. So, for example, the students proposed a badge system where people can just kind of collect their badges and their activities that they did at the School of Alpine Pastures, and so also track their own skill level, but also the engagement with the project. And the second stream was the diversification of revenues. One idea that already got adopted by the Alpine Pastures was a kind of goat sponsorship. So you as a visitor or as a donor, you can sort of take over the sponsorship for one goat, which on the one hand creates an extra source of income, but it also establishes long-term connections with customers and supporters. And the second diversification was the diversification of products and offers. So along the valley, there are multiple options to sustain also other agricultural practices. And with the student projects, these sort of potentials were mapped. So for example, you can see herb courses or courses for making schnapps, which is also quite popular among tourists. And of course, more alpine and meadow care, also including mountain forests. Some of these projects were already adopted together with the Schule der Alm. So they really expanded their networks and also their set of local teachers and local knowledge givers, always with keeping in mind the situatedness of the product. So what were the main learnings of the project? For the association, it was the inspiration for new activities. So for offering new courses like alpine, mountain and meadow care, herbs and bee courses, but also reflecting about their strengths and weaknesses. So what is the business potential, but what are also the main challenges they will face in the next years? And of course, the project also led to some immediate outcome. The goat sponsorship project was adopted and is ongoing now. So I think at this moment, around 10 goats already have sponsors. So a lot of visitors that were there multiple times were happy to sponsor a goat and kind of keep up their connections with this alpine pasture and also their bond, not only with the, of course, local knowledge givers, but also with the animals and the practices in general. For the students, on the other hand, especially during the very challenging COVID years, they had this opportunity to create social cohesion. So especially the final event at the School of Alpine Pastures was really important for them in engaging in team building and bonding, not only among the students, but also with practitioners and partners in the field. So when teaching tourism, for us, it is always important to give them also some tools and some experiences to take out to the tourism life. And their business plans. So this was a very nice project where they could see that their business plans and their work had an immediate impact on tourism practice. Of course, the students are coming from very different also geographical environments, so they learned more about their study environment and the culture of alpine regions, and also got a chance to see how the cooperation between very traditional agricultural practices, tourism, and also education aspect can work together in a very sustainable way. So overall, this project was very warmly welcomed by the students and by the project partners. And we think it is a nice base practice, once for the scope of the project of the association itself, but also for the education aspects that are on the one hand given by the School of Alpine Pastures, and on the other hand are also given for us at the university for the students and the project partners. And with these words, I want to thank you all for your attention, and I warmly invite you to come and experience it yourself. So if you want to take a visit to the Alpine Pastures in Tyrol, drop us an email or explore the Schule der Alm yourself. I thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to questions and the discussion. Have a great conference and speak to you soon.
Thank you so much, Monica. Are you online with us?
Yes, I am. I hope you can hear me.
Perfect. We can hear you. So
Perfect. Nice.
start taking questions. And if you're joining us on Zoom, feel free to put that in the chat. If you're in person, feel free to raise your hand and I can come around with the microphone.
Thank you.
Hello, Monica. My name is Philip, and I've been following the Schule der Alm for quite some time as you all got started, and really appreciate all the work you've done. I think it's incredibly innovative, and I'm curious, and I missed the very beginning of the presentation. I'm sorry if you said this already, but I'm curious about the demographics, the people who are coming, and their intent and what you're finding. I'm curious about generation as well as, kind of multicultural influences and what's bringing people there. And I apologize if you've already said that.
No apologies needed. I didn't touch upon that aspect in the presentation. From the touristic side, actually a lot of clients are very middle to higher income from the German-speaking context mostly. So, for example, the Munich region in Bavaria or also other big cities in Germany really make a lot of the clients that visit there. And for most of them, they actually enjoy just doing hands-on work. So we have a lot of, for example, managers that are trying to sort of get away from their busy lives and weird sometimes jobs where you don't really know, okay, what am I doing this for? So that's one of the main motivations. But what we also now see is that more and more local people actually also join these basic course weeks. So we have, for example, in Tyrol, a lot of colleagues from mine or friends of mine already joined one of the courses because they're like, okay, I've been living here for 10 or 20 years and I've actually no idea what the agricultural history of this place means and what are the people involved in these valleys. So it is, I would say, limited to the German-speaking context, also in terms of the structure of the courses, but there is a huge variety in motivations from actually the more touristy side, so really this getting away, escapism sort of motivation, but also really this educational aspects to really learn more about also your own region that you're actually living in.
Great, thank you. Could I ask another question? Is that okay?
Yes, sure, of course.
Yeah, I lived in South Tyrol I've been there since 1983 at different times. And I've watched Ultental in South Tyrol, where they've sort of done the opposite and taken the winter season and capitalized off of that for farmers with their winter school. And so I wonder, are you doing this? It seems you're doing this primarily in the summer, but are there also thoughts of extending it so it's a more year round in terms of also some of the crafts and things during the winter?
I mean, what the School of Alpine Pastures already benefited for the region is, for example, I think 3 or 4 years ago, there was quite a bad avalanche season in this valley. So there were a lot of avalanches that actually destroyed pastures or huts. And what the School of Alpine Pastures was able to do is to mobilize their volunteers. And actually the tourists, the people who paid for this project, came in winter on their own and rebuilt, for example, huts or remodeled alpine pastures together with the local instructors and the farmers there. So what these showed us was that this network is not just a one-time holiday experience, but that there's actually a support network out there, that they have a lot of advocates now all over the German-speaking countries. For the product itself, it's mainly a summer product, but I guess that's also because Tyrol at the moment is heavily focusing on expanding summer activities, as winters won't get longer in the next years. So for this valley especially, it's very important to expand the summer product offers, also in a touristic sense, because winter tourism is very dominant in Tyrol already. So you have quite a heavy competition in getting new products and projects into the winter tourism market.
Awesome. Thank you so much.